more than what I used to send, but I hoped it was helpful. And the reason why I sent that is, the short time that we have of presenting and giving for the whole module, personally, I would feel is a bit short. So sometimes you may just have to read ahead a bit, and I will send more today. And then possibly, I think our last meeting is, next weekend. Maybe then next weekend I'll give.
It is today.
It's today.
Yes, today is 26.
Then we're going to next week at least. Okay, I think it's fine. No, let's meet. I'll request we meet next week just to finalize. I'll send a coursework, and then we do something at least to conclude on Saturday. So for today, as we agreed, you are going to do the presentations. I hope it is not what has delayed the others. But before we do that presentation, I thought maybe I could have a brief overview of how we relate our statistics to especially the area of health service, applying those data, manipulating our data in the area of health services. The only difference here is that you will have terms that are commonly used in health, that possibly someone who's doing mathematics may not use it daily. So that's what we're just going to introduce, and maybe just mention a few of the things that we expect to be measured in that field, computations that they normally carry out, those rates, population growth, and so on. Others, again, I'll give material for you to read, but at least it's good for us to have an overview. So to start with, we start by appreciating, in most cases, just reminding ourselves, when we deal with the study of human beings, or human population, but specifically population of humans, then that is referred, that's what many people do as demography. So if we are studying about a population, we're studying about that demography, what are some of the things we want to learn from the population? It would include things like generally the size. Because the size of the population, of course, in health, there are reasons why you want the size, because possibly you want to compare, to get a ratio of those who are affected. Point, you will need to know that. Sometimes it could be distribution, population distribution. So one would wonder, what is a distribution? That is, we're looking at the population with respect to some specific parameters. Again, we said size. We could, not size. I could look at sex. Could look at sex and other examples. You see, we're looking at the population, and then you want to see what is the fraction that is affected by this. What is the total number of males maybe there? What is the total number of those who are, employed? What about the dependents? You see, look at sex. We look at the distribution of those people, sex and other categories of value. You see, we're looking at the overall population. That's what I'm referring to as distribution. Of course, it ties closely to composition. Or sometimes may look at study of demography just to know how people are moving around. If you're in an area where you have nomads and you're studying their health, you may want to know possibly why is it that they're not responding to some treatment, or why is it that we are not curbing down a certain disease. You may want to go and see, does their movement affect that? Possibly it's the reason. So that's mobility. We're looking at social mobility. So those are just examples that I was giving to show what demography is, and maybe later on why it's important. to look at demography. The source material for this, I'm not very sure whether I gave it to you, but I will share it to you today. If I did not, then I will share it with you. So if we give close attention to those parameters that we've just mentioned, for example, look at the size. So when we talk about size in demography, what are we looking at? We're looking at the number of that subject of interest in a population. That is demography. The distribution I've just said is arrangement of something in a particular territory, of a group in a particular territory, maybe in a climatic zone, residential area. That is it. Composition is more of the arrangement, the structure. How is the distribution done? One may want to see many males. What's the proportion of males in the north compared to the proportion of males in the west? It shows us the structure of how males are distributed within, for example, the whole country. If you had carried out a census, it's an example. Now, one that may not be as close to English as possible could be the change. What would we call a change? It's a decline or an increase. A change is very wide, but in this case, it's a decline or an increase in total population. Not just total population, but could be of that population. So in migration and so on. We are just mentioning terminologies here. In addition to that, most of these areas I will skip a bit. Not really skip it, I mean it's too theoretical. So one would ask, where do we collect, how do we collect demographic information? You can just think about it. How do we get demographic? In other words, someone tells you, how do you get the number of males in a particular area? How do you get the number of females in a particular area? Of course, you say, hey, we go there and interview them. We go there and observe, which is true. But generally, you are going to carry out a census or you're going to carry out a survey. What is the difference? Maybe for purposes of making it interactive. What do you think is the difference between a census and a survey? Anybody who can share that? Are they the same? Okay, we look at that. But yes, please, Otim. Yes, it is a bit close there, but if you put your answer the other way around, it could be even closer. In other words, you say the opposite of what you've said. But of course, your explanation is somewhere near there. Anyway, what a census is, the difference is A census is a complete count or enumeration of our subject of interest. That is a census. We shall later on see some of the characteristics of a census. Is regular, whereas when you come to a sample survey or a survey, it is carried out on a particular group of a population. It's not a sample, but I'm picking up, I have Uganda, and I'm concentrating on Western Uganda. That's not a census. That is a survey. That is my target out of the population. And just as we mentioned earlier, these things we are doing it to carry out, to make an inference about the overall population. So I'm picking Western Uganda. It's not a sample. I could sample out later on using different techniques, but that is now a survey specific group of a population. And the other element is at a certain point in time. The other thing that we mentioned later is that in a survey, it is, I don't want to call it haphazard, but it comes anytime when you carry it out. Whereas when you're doing a census, it is regular. Everybody knows that the census in Uganda is going to take 10 years. We know it. So it's more regular compared to a survey. Otherwise, they have quite a number of similarities. So that is the main difference. Now, if we just focus our attention on the census, still we can have different types of census. So I'm not showing the PowerPoint slide because I'm just picking an overview before we do a presentation. Maybe the others will join up. When you're carrying out a census, there are two types of census. These are French names, de jure and de facto. De jure, you are counting the number. Let's say if you are carrying out a population census in Uganda, it's done according to the legal place of residence. So if me, I'm from Gulu, for example, I'm working say in Mbarara, and they say there's going to be the Jew census, I'll be sent home. I go, they get me there and do the count. There are advantages and disadvantages of that type of census. The other one is de facto. Now this one here is you count wherever somebody is there, take the count. Finds me in Mbarara, you go to the center, they count you, that's it. So those are the two different types of census. Now, if we just, I think there are not thinking, but there are advantages and disadvantages are things that can logically see. You understand. One is if you look at the advantages of the de jure census, it's if you are getting people taking them where they belong, maybe holiday say people be is not affected by people's movement. Yeah, because you've controlled it, everybody goes where it is. Unlike where they count where somebody is. You get people who have tourists who have come there, then what's going to happen? You're counting them as residents, and yet they are not. So those are some of the disadvantages. I've said advantage is not affected by season. Disadvantage is that people move may lead to even double counting. But one will say, now, how will double counting be there if you have sent to where they stay? The double counting comes in because not all people are going to respect that instruction. Others will not go. Others, you count them today, it says, it's about me, it's about my family. You'll cross over at the other side, you'll be counted again. So those are some of the challenges that come. Whereas when you come to de facto, there's less chance of double counting. It gives less chance of omissions. You're not forcing people to move. But see, people, we shall count here. If it is de facto, for example, the same person will go by the advantages. But at least if we see the principle, we can see reasonable. Yeah. Our point is, in our census, we have options which we can choose from. So normally when you carry out a survey or you carry out a census, what normally you collect? Maybe when you look at the population census, they have ever counted us, or some of you possibly have even participated in this counting, this census. And if you remember the questionnaire or what you were asked to say, some people ask you, of course, but something observable, say what's the sex, what's the age, education, so there are particular things picked from a census, key features of a census. Yeah, the key. Now, one of these key features is the separate enumeration and recording of the characteristics of donor. You pick his information, good information. Yeah. So these characteristics. Yeah. Normally, they say we are carrying the census of Uganda. Clearly, this market, that's Uganda. Of area of interest. Next is, we mentioned earlier, regular intervals. 10 years, Uganda, for example. Those are some of the characteristics, but if you, as you read, as you compare, you'll find things like 6, 7, 10. Yeah. Some repeat a few weak points, but at least we know that key features. You should come up with at least 5 that you can clearly explain, should someone ever ask. Anyway, if someone thinks of attending any other interview after here. So normally in that process of carrying out the census, it's not something just people just bump and say, hey, let's carry out the census. Normally, if you talk to the statistics, the statisticians who carry out the census, they'll tell you that it takes time just to prepare. Then this enumeration process, the census, what we see as the census, is just part of it. And after doing that, they take advantage of what has been collected. So clearly we can see there that there's pre-counting, I would say pre-enumeration. That is phase number 1. Prepare, plan, and so on. Who's going to carry out? Where shall we start from? What is going to be collected? That pre-enumeration is something also demanding. Then number 2, the real count is called the enumeration phase. Then after enumeration, we have post-enumeration. That's now, it could include coding, editing, compiling, tabulation, analysis, and so on. So those are the key phases in a census. Can we think about the advantages of carrying out a census? We know it is population. I'm getting a good picture of the population. That's why I carry out the census. How many dependents are there? How many old people are there in my population? So it gives an idea about what a population is. At the beginning of our unit, this module, we mentioned something, sampling frame. Where do we pick samples from? You pick samples from a population. So if you have an idea about what a population is, for example, Uganda, you can subdivide Uganda into, let's call it four parts. Let's call it 5, okay? Then we say West is one part, North is another one, Central is another one, East is another one, South is another one. Those can be the frames, sampling frames. Then from those sections, you can carry out your sampling. So our point is, our population or knowledge of the population or our demography can help us, or it can serve as our sampling frames if we want to study about the population. Yep. Obvious thing is that it gives important statistics about the population. We mentioned that. It can be used for planning, lighter points you can explain. However, in carrying out, like any other aspects of statistics applied by statistics, we expect errors. So in a sense, you're going to expect errors. People are not cooperative. Number two, there's omission. The day they count, they don't get you home. Those will not wait there. They just skip, or maybe tell the LSC chairman, please, do you know how many people are there? Do you know their age? Oh, they are just around here. The estimate and put there. As a result, you're going to get errors. You're going to get omissions. Yeah. So, sensor results normally is not but at least it gives a rough estimate of what is on the ground. Sometimes we get misreporting. That's challenge number 2 or limitation. Misreporting of the age, not because of memory loss, but intentionally. People don't. Sometimes the things we just say, give the range. What's your age? Because you know this guy is going to deceive you. What about 35 to 40? In those categories, we're making errors. Alternative, because we want relatively accurate information. Then if you tell someone to mention his age, it will be worse, I think. Underreporting of things like that is census. Now, if we turn our attention to surveys, it is I could say it's a bit more, slightly more technical, but as we have mentioned, it's basically census, and then we're looking at particular areas of interest. We say they are specific territorial mention and they are sporadic without periodicity, which is a characteristic of or characteristics of the census. Because for example, now you are going to finish the module, then you start on your research, you come up with a questionnaire, you seek for approval by REC. Then if they approve, possibly in your methodology, you say, I'm going to interview students in Western Uganda or certain facility in Western Uganda. So it's up to them to approve. If they approve, you go. It's nothing about periodicity that, no, we have to wait that to cut out after 5 years and so on. Anytime you can do it. A key difference between census and surveys. Then there are stages in is what they call a transition, or could say a transition, of course, with reference to our demography. One would say demographic transition. It's what defines the trend of the population over a period of, for example, centuries. That's demographic transition. So we are going to see what happens maybe within that almost a generation, then in the second, then the third, and then possibly you compare. So we clearly, it's clear here that it's not just something about 2 months and then we call it a transition, no. So properly defining or understanding changes in a population is what we're highlighting, that it takes time. So there's normally the pre-transitional stage, there's the transitional stage, and then the post-transitional stage. Just try to think about what happens in a population or population, maybe in developing countries. Where do you start? Where do you move to? And then normally what characterizes towards developed country. That's to help us appreciate what happens this transition. So during pre-transition, normally there's birth, high fertility, the population, but also accompanied by high mortality to carry out. So as a result, the general population growth is cancelled out, is minimal. So during pre-transition, normally using too much, dying at the same time much. And one would say this is characterized by a primitive population. That's how they define it. But then as that population, the primitive population changes, they're going to get better medical care. So what we expect, you have not touched on the birth rate, yeah, but you are improving, reducing on the deaths or reducing on mortality. So you expect population to be growing. So in the transitional phase, there's high birth rate, controlled mortality. As a result, high population growth. Is that not characteristic of developing countries? Yes, it is. Then lastly, the post-transitional. Here, you are trying to control both. Apart from just controlling mortality, you come back and control every family, maximum 3 or 2. So I control both mortality and birth rate. Do you expect high population growth? No, it will also go down. So number 3, characteristics of countries. Right? I'm not saying each of the developed countries will control the birth rate, but normally birth rate is either directly or indirectly controlled. So those are the 3 phases in our demographic transition. But the way it's important when you carry out your research that sometimes you just put questions there. You say no, and then, but many times we go to getting up into maybe your methodology. We are in this phase. This is my death rate. What is the death rate? What is fitting for me? What should I measure? Yeah. Try to incorporate it in your work because, like any research, someone can come up with something one, and the characteristics of what he comes up with it one day is not incorporating most of this because he has the time. Even people talk about AI coming up with for you their projects. It comes, but apart from being detected by AI detectors, those are some of the things. Someone will see it and just know, no, this one here is not a person. So try to incorporate them, not copying and pasting, but you yourself as you write, makes it, let's call it human, a human writer. So in describing our population, that are things, like tools I could call it, that can help someone look at and easily see, oh, this place here has more dependence than the other area. And one thing that has been used is what is called the population pyramid. It shows you, for example, characteristics, you say the sex or dependence, as I mentioned, in a set, not dependence. Yeah, it could be dependence, but I would say age group 0 to 4, it gives you the number. Maybe age group, as the age goes up, it gives you total number of what you're monitoring, yeah, whether dependence or something. So as a result, you come up with something that almost not exactly pyramid, but looks like a pyramid. So that's what a population pyramid is. I would have illustrated, but today I'm not sharing. It is a horizontal line, and then a vertical line, and then boxes on the left and right. Basically, you can look at them. Which is what I'll give later. So that is about it. But yeah, maybe let me just add one more. That some of the things that we measure, which may not be as obvious as a normal ordinary user would say, For example, if we take the measurements that automatically will have to come up. So for example, looking at the sex ratio, mind is the ratio of males to females or females to male. Yes, it is close to that. However, measurement of this normally is females. So for example, if you want to say the sex ratio is normally the ratio of male to female per 100 female population. That's additional thing that I was putting. It is per 100 population. So the real formula for the sex ratio is M for male over F for female times 100. You see? Now, when you come to the child woman ratio, you may say child to mother. But what is the computation? We have to know who the child and know who is the woman and know which population we are considering. So normally, that child-woman ratio is the population of children in the age bracket. Take note, the age bracket between 0 and 4 to the population of the women. That is age bracket 15 to 49. That is the ratio. However, we are looking at a given number of children, and we're looking at a given number of women. So it is P that the 0 to 4 over 15 to 49 times 1,000 women, not 100, times 1,000 women. That's child-woman ratio. So I just wanted to highlight for you that to mention. And also, when you measure dependency, we want to look at who are the dependents. The dependents are children, elderly. When we talk about the ratio, we're going to add children plus the elderly and put it over those who normally are actively supporting them. That is the age group between 15 and 64. Now the children are 0 to 14, the elderly are 65 and above. So you have population for 0 to 14 plus population 15 to 64, that gap in the middle, per 100. Yeah, I think those are the key things I really wanted to bring out. To look at examples to see how they're computed, because they're straightforward. Other ratios that you will want to read more about is the fertility rate. Fertility rate is very common. Age-specific fertility rate, total fertility rate, gross reproduction rate, and I think that's it for now. Yeah. So I think that one says if there's anybody who has not come by now, they will not come. So I'll request have sent messages are not read. Let me just check. All right. Okay, so any group that is ready, please feel free, unmute and start. First group. Or you can choose who will start on the Zoom session. Maybe you can start. Patrick doesn't seem to be okay. Fine, go ahead. Everybody did get that assignment. People are planning a sit-down strike. You want to say?
Yeah, doctor, the last message I received from you was saying that I know you fear exercises. No, I will send a few exercises for the presentation, and that was the last message you sent.
Yeah. People. Okay. All right. So 2 weeks, nothing. You didn't.
Yeah, from the last
Did
time
you do anything?
I haven't received. We didn't receive any assignment. The previous assignment we did that we presented the last lecture we had, we submitted on your email, I believe, and we haven't received any other apart from the notes that you sent during the Easter weekend, I think. Yeah.
Okay, let me check. Let me check if I didn't forward even on mail. Anyway, let's check. Let's have a short break of 5 minutes. If true I didn't send, then we're going to discuss it now, so that we don't say we have another. If we just do it now, yeah.
Okay.
So let's be back by 10 minutes. I mean, There translate a bit. Okay, so I want us to just review the questions, and then you try them. Can you see my shared screen? Hello, is the screen visible?
Yes, yes. Dr. It is.
Okay, fine. Now this was meant to help us apply what we covered earlier, and of course I just put the marks there to assign. we did was data which was not grouped. Yeah, it was for data that was not grouped. This is grouped specifically to emphasize that you practice them. So you may have to use the frequency to help you carry out the computation. Of course, I put there calculate variance and standard deviation. No big difference. The only difference is putting a square root. It's just about how to learn to group, work with this data, how to create the tables, which table is necessary, and that's it. I mean, when we're computing. Then the second one is to highlight an area that we didn't spend time on. Normally, when you're working with the patient data, you are studying about how a disease is moving. You may want to have an idea. You may want to know how to forecast. This has been happening. We expect this certain duration of time. We expect the disease, the effect to have gone down, things like that. So we use regression analysis in doing that. We want to see the relationship between the different factors that could be affecting the patient. Though here we've talked about expenditure, we've talked about revenue, but these are just two variables that would be under consideration. So our variables could be something completely different. It could be the weight and mass of a patient who is affected by a given disease. So the same principle applies. So you are going to see how to get that, measure the coefficient, and how to interpret that coefficient. There are different techniques that could be used here. Many of the ones that you maybe you are familiar with, there's something called this Spearman's correlation coefficient, there's Kendall's correlation coefficient. They do the same thing, though people will choose one over the other because of the ease with which you can work with, but they basically do the same thing. Then when you come to that part B, determining the equation of least equation. Now, in other research, social research, even any others, this can be looked at as a model that you come up with, because you're mathematically showing the relationship between the variables. It qualifies to be a model, especially in situations where you're having 2-3 models. You may take time to explain to people, this represent model 1, this represent model 2, this can represent model 3, and their signs mean this. Because you see that whenever there's a positive sign, it means a change in variable 1 is leading to an increase in variable 2. If there's a negative sign, an increase in variable 1 will lead to a reduction in the other variable. Now, many people pick it, someone does it, and then it comes in, there's a negative sign, and you say, when I increase this, the other one also increased. But you see from the formula that a minus sign does not support that. So this is just to help us get you to that. Or if you want, you can even use it to say that's the model that was come up with. But of course, today, I want to say I used Python, I used the machine learning and came up with the model, which is not bad because it supports large data sets. If I'm working with a small data set, why do I go there? So this is what I would like you to do for the rest of the time. But this one you may have to submit. Please, in groups of 2s, after you're done, just forward me, if possible, before 5. That's my request. Next week, for those who have just come, we are going to conclude during the week. I'm sending the coursework. Yes, does it any question regarding the assignment or anything else?
Okay. My question is,
Yes.
in case you forget to send one,
I will not. I should not forget. At least you will remind me.
when should I?
We can't all forget.
Okay. So
Yeah.
and that
But I will
coursework
try.
will it be the final?
Yeah. Yes, I think. That's what your colleagues recommend, that we should do the coursework. But if you want a written, no problem. I can also do it if it's simpler. If a written is simpler, I can do it, and we do it during the week. If you find the coursework better, we go with that.
It's okay, Doctor.
All right. All right. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Export to sheet.